privilege and a pleasure to be with you folk. And I mean that. I love your family of churches, and I've been blessed for many, many years by what has come out of the wider New Frontiers family. And Mike Betts has become a very, very dear friend. And so any way that I can serve you in a little way is a privilege. I just want to give a disclaimer to begin with, if I may. Having done things over Zoom for almost a year now, I have come to the inescapable conclusion that I'm not good at it. I'm really not. And so forgive me if it goes a little bit all over the place. I will try not to, but it's not my medium. I'm too old for this, and but I'll do my best to share a few things. Before we go on to the subject, can I just read, I just want to read you a little quote I discovered this morning, first thing this morning. And you know, when you've just discovered something, you got to tell someone. And you are the unfortunate people who are the first people that I've had contact with. It's from John Bunyan, who wrote Pilgrim's Progress. There you go, I've started already. He says this: his mercy will live longer than your sin. It will live longer than temptation. It will live longer than your sorrows. It will live longer than your persecutions. And I would add to that, his mercy will live longer than our failures. And he was talking all about the incredible mercy and grace of God. And that's the basis really for everything. I just want to talk, you've asked me to talk about the supernatural and how we can move in that and grow in that, both in the setting of church gathered and in the setting of church scattered in the marketplace. And I've got seven points. I'm not usually one for points, but because we're on Zoom, it's the only way we're going to get through this. And I'm keeping an eye, before you groan, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. It's here. And so don't worry, I will be finished by 20 past. Point one, these are obvious. None of this is rocket science, I'm afraid. I'm a simple person. And so what you get is simple teaching. But point one, simple but vital and really important we understand, it's all about love. It really is all about love. If we make it about power, we miss it completely. If we make it about anything else, we miss it. Our motivation should be love. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 1, Paul says, make love your aim and eagerly desire the spiritual gifts, especially the gift of prophecy. And we're to eagerly desire the gifts. We really are. We're to press into the gifts. And that's another thing we need to understand. But if we eagerly desire the gifts for any other reason than the display and the unveiling of his love to his people, we've missed the point of the gifts. The gifts always point to the giver. They're not meant to point to us. And so, you know, we're failing if people at the end say, oh my goodness, you're such an amazing human being. You're so anointed. You're so gifted. Oh, you're so powerful. If they say that, I'm thinking, I'm wanting with the apostles in the Acts of the Apostles to tear me clothes and say, no, 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 it's about Jesus. Our motto should be the words of John the Baptist. He must increase, I must decrease. On one level, saying that, it's not very practical, but it's absolutely vital to everything that follows. We need to pray, God, give me love for the person I'm praying for. Give me love for the person I think you've given me a word for. Give me love that I may long for you to meet people because you love them and your love flows out through me. Number two, we're to proclaim the good news of Jesus in our words and our deeds by every means. There's two dangers when it comes to supernatural ministry. And there's two temptations. The first temptation is what many in the church believe, is that it's not really very necessary. It's not really very vital. And that's not biblical. And that's the bottom line. It is not biblical to say that. It's in the Acts of the Apostles, not just in the life of Jesus, but in the life of the early church. The ministry of the Spirit, the supernatural encounters were normative. They flowed. Things changed. You just have to read the story of the early church to see that. And so the first mistake we make is by saying, it's not necessary. As long as we preach the gospel with our words, that's enough. The second mistake we make is we can say it's the main thing. That's it. If you don't move in supernatural ministry, you haven't got it. No, it's by all means. I will become all things to all people so that by some means I might win. I've misquoted that completely. Forgive me. But there you go. I did that deliberately to see which of you will be able to quote it correctly in the chat. That was my deliberate mistake of the morning. Sorry, Lord. And so we want to minister in every way. In every way. We preach the gospel of Christ and him crucified. We feed the hungry. We become friends with people. We get beside them. It's proclamation evangelism, friendship evangelism, servant evangelism, power evangelism, and every other evangelism going. And it's in the context of everything else, as we look at the story of the early church in Acts, that the supernatural ministry is the most powerful. When that takes place, that's when it's most powerful, in the context of everything else. And you see that in the life of Jesus. Which is it easier, to forgive sins or to say to this man, take up your mat and walk? And we understand that Jesus ministered out of compassion. He ministered out of love, and he ministered in every way. And it was like he took out whichever tool was the most appropriate at the time. So, he was kind to the broken. He saw Zacchaeus up the tree, and he had a word of knowledge about him. He had a prophetic word about him. The Samaritan woman at the well, who was a sex addict and was broken. He had a word of knowledge about her, but he didn't do it I think God's given me a word. It flowed. It was natural with everything else. So let's remember the context by all means. Without faith, number 3, it is impossible to please God. For anyone who believes in God must believe that he exists and that he is the rewarder of those who seek him. And it's not faith in our faith. Again, sometimes in our charismatic, more Pentecostal circles, the emphasis can be on my faith, on my praying, on what I do. And it is important that we do what we do. It's important. He wants us to act, but it's in response to his initiative. It's in Reformed theology, we believe that he initiates and we follow and we respond. If that works, that's true about salvation, it surely has to be true about the way we continue to walk with him. And so faith is a necessary ingredient, but it's not faith in hyping up our faith. It's faith in his character. It's faith in who he is. Do we really know? Do we really understand that he is for us? That his mercy really is greater than our sin, that will last longer? Do we believe that his mercy is so great that he wants to meet people? He wants to more than we want him to, and he wants to do it through us. He is committed to moving through his church. He is committed to working through his church. And when we get that, our doubts start to disappear. And here's our doubts, pick yours. Oh, I don't know that he'll use me. I don't have enough faith. What's the problem with that? It's about me. He won't use me. I don't pray enough. What's wrong with that? It's about me. He won't use me. I don't know the Bible well enough. What's wrong with that? It's all about me. And we could so on. He won't use me because I have mixed motives. I don't have the right motives. I want to be noticed. What's wrong with that? Once again, it's all about me. Hey, and I believe in prayer. I believe in knowing the word. I believe in having our motives right and all of that. But when we take our eyes off ourselves and we put our eyes on him and his grace, his undeserved grace and mercy for us, that he wants to use me even when I don't get it right. He wants to use me. He wants to flow through me. When we get that, everything changes. And I think expectancy is really, really important. Years ago, I longed for God. I was frustrated reading the book and then finding that my life was not very much like the book when it comes to supernatural ministry. And, I'd pray for someone and maybe a headache would feel better or something like that. And I longed for what I saw in the scriptures. And then I came across this guy called John Wimber, and his sidekick, he'd hate me saying that at the time, was a guy called Blaine Cook. And I watched the way Blaine ministered, and things happened when Blaine prayed. I mean, it was incredible. Supernatural ministry, accurate words of knowledge, incredible healings, amazing stories. And I decided that I would get to know Blaine so I could find out his secret and steal it. And so I invited myself to go and stay at his home in Orange County. And I took my friends Matt and Beth Redman with me. And they were just recently married, and I wanted them for backup support. And we were going to find out Blaine Cook's secret. Well, it wasn't a little vial of something. As I watched him over the next few days, I realized that if it moved, he laid hands on it. He really did. And there was one time he was driving Matt, Beth, and I from his home in, I can't remember the name of the place now, it doesn't matter, to Anaheim, which was half an hour's drive away. And as he was driving, Beth said to Matt, Matt, darling, could you give me an aspirin? Have you got an aspirin? And Blaine said, why do you want an aspirin? She said, oh, I've got a bit of a headache. And he said, we're not having that. He had one hand on the steering wheel, the other hand laid hands on her and prayed. Then a bit later on, I coughed. And he said, what's going on there? And I said, I just got a bit of a cough. I've had it for a couple of weeks. Well, we're not having that. One hand on the steering wheel, the other hand on my chest. And by the time we got to Anaheim in 30 minutes, he had prayed for all three of us. One morning, we came down for breakfast, and we were having breakfast. And in the middle of breakfast, I mean, we were talking about what nice croissants they were, for goodness sakes. We weren't praying. In the middle of breakfast, he looks at Beth and he has a word for her just so naturally. And she's in tears and Matt and I are in tears because it's so incredibly accurate and he couldn't possibly have known. And he's done that to me so many times since in restaurants. My favorite place, and I can't relax when I'm with him because I'm wondering if there's going to be a word that comes. And I asked him, I said, Blaine, something that really annoys me, and it's this: why does God use you a lot more than he uses me? I'm miffed. And he said, do you really want to know the answer? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, here it is. The difference between you and me, he said, is I have a high expectation that God will use me. You don't. Ouch. Ouch. He was absolutely right. He had a high expectation, so he was alert all day. He was alert all the time. I think you want to use me. Do you want to use me in this situation? Do you want to use me here? And the high expectation comes from knowing the Father's heart. Why wouldn't he want to bless people and meet people? He is a missionary God. He is a God who seeks. He is a God who reaches out. He is a God who never lets go, as we've been singing. You know, and then he said the second reason is, I made a deal with God that if I thought he was saying something to me, I would say everything he was telling me, and I wouldn't put it through the grid of, is this too risky, or does it go against common sense or whatever? And I knew exactly what he meant, because if I thought God was speaking to me and giving me a word for someone, what I used to do is I used to take bits off the word to make it more easy for everyone, for more people to respond. So if I had a word, there's someone here, you're worried about your second son, and at 4 o'clock, you were really, upset, and you prayed and you said, God, I need wisdom. I don't know what to do with my second son, and his name is Keith. I would have said, there's someone here, you might be worried about your second son, and recently you prayed, and I would water it down. And I learned not to. And by doing it this way, more people respond, not less. I've been amazed. And he really, really helped me with that. So it's having faith, not in our faith, but in who he is. It's having confidence in his compassion, his grace, his mercy, his generosity. That's the heart of his love. The heart of his love is generosity. Number 4, hold on, I'm just going to check the time. Yeah, number 4, learning to listen. I can't emphasize this enough. This is huge. This is what we miss so often. We don't listen. We need to learn from our Catholic friends about the art of contemplation, if you like. Or actually, I think as an Anglican vicar, I actually should have been a Quaker. I'm a closet Quaker. I really am. And the Quakers, I honestly believe, have much to teach us. They were called the Society of Friends. And when they started, it was a spirit-led movement. And they would gather together and they would say, no one is going to speak until the Spirit moves, until the Spirit comes and moves them. And then we speak only when we really sense the Spirit moving. And in their meetings, they used to shake, they used to quake when the Spirit came so powerfully. So the name Quaker was a disparaging label that people gave them. Oh, they're just Quakers. And they took it as a badge of honor. Now, I'm not saying we have to do it exactly like that, but we've lost the art of listening. The psalmist tells us, the Lord says through the psalmist, be still and know that I am God. We charismatic evangelicals with Pentecostal twinges, we love being loud. We love words, we love singing, and we love doing. We are activists. We need to learn to be still, to listen to his voice, and to still our hearts. I just found, and you see, in the end, all of this is about relationship. It's about relationship with him. It all comes from relationship. Yes, he gives gifts, but the gifts are used at best in the context of an intimate relationship with our Father in heaven and our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. That's the place. That's the sweet spot, and even during the first lockdown, back in April, May, June, whenever it was, I just found it a blessing, because I would go every morning to my garden and I'd have two chairs out, and I would have one for me and one for my Bible. And I would, before I did anything, before I did my quiet time, before I read my passage and said my prayers and got my prayer list out, the Lord said to me, just for a moment, shut up. Just for a moment, be. And the first couple of times, I found it a little bit hard, even though I've always tried to do that, but to do it for any length. And then, do you know, as I just sat in his presence, I noticed things I hadn't noticed before. Even the noise around me, how loud the birds were singing. Oh gosh, I hadn't picked that up before. And I noticed things in my heart that he revealed. Search me, O God, and know my ways. You know, and it was like, oh, am I a bit anxious? Am I a bit, what's going on there? Am I a bit frustrated? Is there something that's bugging me? Lord, are you trying to show me something? That's it. What are you saying? And you see, it starts with you. You know, to try and have words for the stranger across the road, if you're not letting God speak to you for you, is just not going to happen, really. It's just not, and it's not going to satisfy. And so it's learning to listen. And the way we listen is by being still, by being still. A friend of mine once said, 80% of the prophetic is simply paying attention. And it really is. It really is paying attention. And what it is, you know, he speaks very, very, usually very gently, not very loudly, very gently. And it can change everything. If I could give two little quick examples, and I will speed up. First of all, a few years ago, Tim Hughes was our second worship pastor, and I felt the Lord saying he was to go to HTB. Not that I wanted to get rid of Tim, I loved him, but it was one of those things the Lord said. So I mentioned it to Nicky Gumbel, and then I mentioned it to Tim, and it was right. But it was like, oh, but do you know what? A little bit before that, there was this guy called Ben Cantillon on our team. And I'd met Ben when he was a teenager, and he came to join us. And he was the drummer in our band, or he would play keyboards, or he would play guitar. He was very musical. And I saw him as Ben, musician, and he's a versatile musician. And then there was one day I was flying home. I can't remember where from now, but I remember I was sitting on the plane looking out the window, and suddenly the thought came into my mind, ask Ben to lead worship. And my first response was, what a ridiculous thought. He's just a muso. You know Pilavachi better than that. Musos, and they're not good at leading worship. Yeah, you know, you have to have people who have theology and all of that. And then the more I thought about it, the more it wouldn't go away. And it was, is that you, Lord? And by the plane landed, it was like, why hadn't I thought of that before? And when I saw Ben, I said, hey, Ben, in 3 weeks' time, I want you to lead worship on Sunday. So just to get yourself ready. And he said, are you serious? And I said, yes, of course. And he said, what made you say that? And I said, well, bizarrely, I would never have thought you as a worship leader, forgive me, but I was on the plane and just, I felt the Lord say to me, ask Ben to lead worship. Ben welled up completely. He choked and he said, I don't believe it. He said, last week, I felt God say to me, Ben, now's the time for you to start leading worship. And I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, if this is you, you know, you're going to have to tell Mike, because I can't say that to him. Isn't that amazing? And he became the third worship pastor in our church. And it was like, I could easily have missed it. I could easily have dismissed it. I could easily have not been paying attention. One other very quickly, and this is to do with my street. I've lived in this road for 20 years, and to my shame, I haven't really known my neighbors very well. I've been so busy. That's my excuse. I haven't been a good neighbor. That's the honest truth. I'll stop making excuses. And then back in June, I was in the kitchen, and just this thought came into my head that I now recognize as the Lord, cook for your neighbors. Now, what you don't know about me is, of all my gifts, my good looks, my charming personality, my fashion sense, possibly the area I am most gifted and anointed, and I say this in all humility, is cooking. I cook Greek food like you would not believe. And as I was in the kitchen, I felt the Lord say, cook your neighbor's Greek food. So I cooked a leg of lamb. It's called gleftigor, and I cooked it in foil slowly for hours in its own juices. And my first response was, I can't do this because they'll think I'm weird. I think they think I'm weird anyway, and they'll be embarrassed. And then the Lord said to me, no, Mike, you'll be embarrassed. That's the problem. And I knew it was him. So I cooked the leg of lamb, and I had to take up my courage. I went and knocked on my neighbor's door, and they opened it, and I said, hello, would you like a leg of lamb? Here it is in its foil cooked. I've cooked it for you. To my utter astonishment, they loved it. I mean, I knew they'd love the leg of lamb, but they loved the fact that I cooked it for them. So then I made another dish called macaroni di forno, which is a bit like lasagna, only loads better. And I took it to my neighbors, and they loved it. And and then I cooked for my neighbors the other side. And then I cooked for the neighbors 3 doors up. And over the last 6 months, I have been cooking for my neighbors all round. It has transformed everything. You know, my neighbors now text me asking me to pray for them. They ask me to pray for them. To my neighbors 3 doors up, they noticed at Christmas I didn't have a wreath on my door, so they made me one and brought it round. I have neighbors texting me, getting in touch with me. They've all got my number now, saying, hey, if there's anything you need, just let us know. Anything I can be doing for you. And do you know, when this is over, we're going to have a big party, a street party, the whole street outside on the green outside my front door. And I'm going to cook the most food any human being has ever cooked in their life. And it all came from one little nudge. You see, sometimes we expect it to be incredibly spiritual, when actually it's usually incredibly normal. So number 5, sorry, I'm going to speed up. 4, listen. 5, obey. I've said that. I'm not going to dwell on that. Obey. Just do what he says. And this is about having, if I may say it, the right fear of the Lord. You know, and fear is not being afraid of the Lord. Fear is being so in awe and trembling of him, of his majesty, of his amazingness, that we want to obey him, that we want to please him, that our greatest desire is, Lord, I want to do what you say. I've said it many times. You know, Jesus said obedience is God's love language. It's the ultimate way we express love. And I really love singing, and I believe in singing. But there's one that caps it all: obedience. If you love me, John 15, Jesus says, you will obey my commands. And then he says, you're my friends if you do what I command you. And the thing about obedience is it's exhilarating, but it's also scary, because obedience is doing something because he's told you, not because you happen to agree with it. My test for me, am I hearing God, is if everything he's telling me is what I thought anyway, then I'm a bit suspicious. I'm baptizing my own desires and saying this is the Lord. It's when he says, cook a leg of lamb for your neighbors, and I give him the list of reasons why it's not a good idea, just like Moses did at the burning bush. When I do that, I say to myself, I am in good company, Lord. I'm going to give you my list. If Moses could do it, then I can do it. And the Lord says, you are in good company. Moses ended up doing what I told him. So you do it. You obey. And there's a blessedness that miracles happen at the point of our obedience that is fueled by love and faith in him. That's the place miracles happen. So I was going to do that. Number 6, how am I doing time? 4 minutes left. Number 6, don't let failure stop you. Guys, I can't tell you how important this is. What stopped me so often from stepping out was my fear of failure, my fear of looking stupid, my fear of, frankly, of being humiliated. And there's that, and sometimes that's even a fear, if I fail, I've let you down, God. Well, the way it works is we learn as we go. We learn as we go. And our friends at King's Arms Church, Bedford, I'm sure you've heard this. A couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, I loved what they did. They did a year, they wanted in a year to do, I think it was 1,000 acts of courage as a church. And so what they did is they encouraged everyone to do an act of courage and to let them know what it was. And so I think they had a database of the acts of courage. And every Sunday, they had different people get up and say about their acts of courage. Here's one example. This lady got up and she said, I was at the bus stop on Thursday. And as I was waiting for the bus, there was a lady there and she had 2 children with her. And I noticed she was looking upset and I thought she was crying. And so I prayed and I thought, right, I'm going to go up to her. So I went up to her and I said, hello, are you okay? I'm a Christian. Would you like me to pray for you? And the lady said, oh, that's very kind of you, but no, thank you. No, it's fine. And then she said, and the bus came and we got on, and that's the story. That's the story. When she gave that testimony on Sunday, everyone stood and clapped and cheered the act of courage. And do you know, it's almost like we need to have a few of those in the bank. Because I don't know why, but it's almost like the Lord wants us to know, will you keep doing this? Will you keep doing this? Will you be obedient, whatever the seeming results? Will you keep reaching out with my love? And I will teach you how to hear me. I will teach you in the place of seeming failure. And I love that. I love that. And I remember John Wimber saying, when he was convinced from scripture that healing was for today, he said they prayed, I think it was for 9 months every Sunday for healing for people in their church. No one was healed. Not one person was healed. He said jokingly, they got sick praying for the sick because they caught their germs and their viruses. And he said, no one got healed. And he said after 9 months, he was so upset. People were leaving church. And he said, God, you say in your word to do this, but you don't back up your act. We're doing what you tell us to, but you don't back up your act. What's going on? He said, Lord, I'm not going to do this anymore. And the Lord said 2 things to him. He said, John, are you going to believe my word, or are you going to believe your experience? Ouch. Put your trust in my word. And then he said John Wimber said that the Lord said to him, either you obey me, either you do what I say, or you get out. And John said his question was, what exactly do you mean by out, Lord? Out of ministry, out of leadership, out of the kingdom? uh, I think that was said tongue in cheek, but it was like obey through the failure, and that's how you grow, and that's how you learn. And then finally, it's linked with that. Um, Perseverance is the missing gift in the Church of Jesus Christ. It is the missing gift, the gift of plodding, the gift of keeping going. And do you know, folks, and I do end with this, we keep going, when it's a value. It's something that God gives us passion for. 29 years ago, I planted the church I'm still leading, Soul Survivor Watford. I came with 10 others who had been in my youth group and were 18. And we planted the church. I want you to know, I don't say this too much because I want to look good. But before I successfully planted Soul Survivor Watford, I had 2 failures. I planted 2 churches before Soul Survivor Watford, and both went down the plug hole. The second one, the leadership team I gathered around me decided they didn't want me to lead them, and I had to leave. And I made loads of mistakes. And you know, after the second failure, I remember I had this choice. Everything in me said, I don't want to go through this again. I can't do this. I'm not good at this. Can't do this. But you know, when it came to it, the thing that made me go again was, I'm burning to reach young people in Watford who are unchurched with the gospel. I'm burning. It's killing me. I can't not do it. And I don't care if I have 100 failures. I'm not going to give up because I can't do anything else, because this burns in me. And it's the same with supernatural ministry. The enemy always whispers in your ear, oh, come on, you don't need to do that now. You don't need to pray for that person. He'll always do that. But for me, it's like, no, I see the value. I want them to experience your love, Jesus. I want them to know that you're there and you know all about them. I want them to be filled with the sweet presence of your love. I long for that. And so I'm never going to give up. And that's how it works. That's how it works. I'll finish with another little quote from my reading this morning. I'm reading a great book that's just come out called Rejoice and Tremble by Michael Reeves, who's, it's just great. And this is a little quote. Those who fear the Lord know his love, mercy, and compassion. They can know they are loved, accepted, protected, and delighted in. They take pleasure in the one who takes pleasure in them. And so I end going full circle. In the end, it's about taking pleasure in the one who takes pleasure in me. It's about loving him and giving his love away. And it's no more complicated than that. I'm sure in the Q&A, hopefully, we'll get a lot more practical. But I just needed, rather than telling you exactly how do you do this, how do you do that, you know what, if it burns in us and we want to, we just want to respond, we want to take pleasure in the one who takes pleasure in us, then we go for it. And we go through the failures, and we go through the nerves, and we go through the not, because we long, and we're not going to give up. I've landed. I can't switch myself off.
Thank you, Mike. That's fantastic. Would you like just to pray for us just for a moment before we go into the comfort break? That would be great.
Yes. Sorry, I've gone 4 minutes over.
That's all right. That's fine. That's fine.
Father, I thank you for this group of your children from many different places. And I thank you that you take pleasure. You take pleasure in each one of them. And you want, Lord, you long that they would display the magnificence of your love and your grace in their lives, in their words, in their actions. Because you love them so much, you want them to be co-workers with you. You want them to be not only your sons and daughters, but you want them to share in the family business, which is giving your love away. I pray, Lord, that you would anoint them, give them courage, give them a gift of faith. Lord, may they know you better. May their desire be to know you and to make you known. And out of that place, Lord, may they step out and see you do more than they could ask or imagine. For the glory only of you, Lord Jesus, our Redeemer, our friend, and our King. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike. That's great.